I pledge.
Thank you. Item 1.03, adoption of the agenda, which has been amended at my request to add item 1.04 to allow the filing of conflict of interest statements. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item 1.04, filing of conflict of interest statement. At the last meeting, I explained that I would not be participating other than to officiate at the meetings moving forward because of the fact that I have, for many years, been counsel to the Mishawaka-Penn Harris Public Library. I have filed my conflict statement and would like to read the pertinent parts of it into the record. I'm a partner in the law firm of Schindler, Olson, Curry, and Dendu, which is under contract to provide legal advice and services to the Mishawaka-Penn Harris Public Library for a fixed annual fee. The library has offered to acquire for not more than $100 the assets of the Hannah Lindahl Children's Museum, now owned by and operated under the auspices of the school city of Mishawaka. Although I'm not providing any advice or legal services to the library in connection with this matter, will not benefit financially from the library's efforts to acquire this asset, and have been advised by the Indiana School Board Association's legal staff that this is not a legal conflict. This statement is filed to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Since my law firm provides legal services to the library for a fixed annual amount, any services provided in connection with this matter by another member of my firm will not increase the firm's compensation or confer any profit or financial benefit on me. I have reviewed these matters with legal counsel for the ISBA and have been advised by their legal staff that this is not a conflict requiring the filing of this statement. Nevertheless, I'm filing this statement to avoid any appearance of impropriety, and will recuse myself from any discussion or decision on this matter on behalf of either the library or school city of Mishawaka, and will not engage in any activity to influence any decision on this matter by either such party. The filing of a statement requires submission to the rest of the board for acceptance or rejection. So is there a motion to accept the conflict statement, from which I will be abstaining?
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept my conflict statement. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I abstain. So moving on to business and operations. Item 2.01, to take information on the Hannah Lindahl Children's Museum. I do want to note that although people did sign up for the speaker registration form, this is not a limitation on who can speak. Anybody who wants to speak to this matter is welcome to do so. Depending on how many intend to speak, we may impose time limits so that we won't be here all night, but don't feel that you can't speak if you haven't signed up. When you do get up to speak, please do so at the microphone and give your name and address for the record. Who would like to go first? Ms. Fye, would you like to explain the whole context of what's going on here? I think that would be a good place for...
I already thought I had a choice whether I could go first. This is pretty exciting. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you tonight, President Curry, Superintendent Barker, members of the board. About a year ago, I started working with the Hannah Lindahl Children's Museum. Previous to that, I'd never heard of them. I'm sorry. I had never heard of them, and I quickly became a fan. Working with the folks that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last year, a little bit more than a year, I've learned a lot, and I've come to respect a really well-focused team in the work that we've done. And so I was asked tonight to talk to you a little bit about what we've done over the past year. some of which you know, some you may not know. And I could probably be up here for hours telling you everything that's gone on, but we don't want to do that either. So allow me a chance to give you an overview. When everything started in January of 2019, that was our planning phase. I'm going to refer to it as phase one. It was a planning time. We were tasked with coming up with a strategic plan that would talk about the museum and how it could remove itself, as it were, from School City and become self-sustaining, or maybe there were other options at that point. So we were tasked with trying to decide how that might happen. And we spent that first 6 months through June 30th talking about exactly what we wanted the museum to be, what it would look like, reimagining. And it was a really exciting time. The entire year has been. But we came up with a lot of things that obviously we couldn't start to implement those things until we had approval by the board. But I must admit, we did start to implement some of those items and work on them. We had goals that we were trying to focus on, and those goals were certainly to maintain an alliance with School City of Mishawaka. That was important to us. We celebrate our 74th anniversary this year, so it seemed very, very important to maintain that relationship. We wanted to become self-sustaining. And if you read the article that was in the South Bend Tribune today, the last sentence kind of grabbed me. And it says, it's largely an old-style museum of static displays rather than a modern museum with interactive exhibits and hands-on activities. I might not have put it that way, but that was exactly what we were addressing, is how can we reimagine this museum and make it something that our visitors will be very excited to attend over and over and over again. We wanted to make sure that we fulfilled our vision and our mission. Let me remind you, the vision was that we envisioned a community where curiosity about history ignites enthusiastic learning. Our mission, which is sort of fortuitous because it talks about the self-sustaining, and the sentence I just read you. Hannah Lindahl Children's Museum creates a vibrant learning environment through interactive displays, experience, and events designed to bring history to life. So even then, that gave you a peek into what we were planning as we moved forward. We also wanted to become a regional attraction, and Lisa will tell you that the very first thing I said to her when she introduced me to the museum was, this needs to be seen. This needs to be out there for more people. This can be a regional attraction. And know that I've spent many, many years in economic development, so that's something I would say anyway. I'm going to look at it through that filter. We had 4 strategic areas that we were looking at. First of all, we called it Museum 2.0. We were going to reimagine the museum. We had to look at staffing, we had to look at location, and we had to look at funding. Last week, Superintendent Barker shared with you the requests that we made as part of phase 1, and it included us staying and going through this reimagining process and being able to address those 4 areas through June 30th of 2021. Hopefully sooner. We understand that the space is needed, but that was the time span that we were given at that time. So we began our work, and we entered into phase 2, and that was more the implementation phase. And so we addressed those focus areas that we just talked about. Again, countless hours, countless volunteer hours, because all of the people that worked on this are volunteers, whether they're members of the advisory board, whether they're volunteers for the museum, all volunteers. And I cannot stress enough how important that is. So what did we do as far as Museum 2.0? Well, one of the first things we wanted to do is continue building partnerships. You can't do something like this if you don't have partners. Now, we have lots, but just a few to describe to you. We worked with IU South Bend. It made sense to us that we would partner with a local post-educational institution. And we talked to them about our education kits. We talked to them about interns, student projects. They even said, you know, we have professors that would be interested in this. We want to bring them to the museum to help you. Very exciting to see that kind of interest. We talked to Gears, which is Lego Robotics. Then we talked to them about having a satellite I don't know if office is the right word, but a satellite so that we could bring, Lego Robotics is already in Mishawaka, but it's another place, to spur on that kind of interest. We talked with the Pokagon Band. We felt that that was an important part of our history, and that was a partnership that needed to take place. And so we spent time with them, letting them know we really, really want to stay true to their story. It's not my story to tell. It's not the museum's story to tell. It's the Pokagon Band's story to tell. And they were very willing to help us with that. We worked with Ivy Tech. We saw a lot of items in the museum that could easily be 3D printed so that there would be more hands-on, interactive kinds of opportunities. So those are just a few examples of some of the folks that really embraced us fully when we came to them and asked. In fact, I'm not sure that I can give you an example of anyone that we've spoken with that did not. That is also odd, unfortunately. We wanted to look at the exhibits and the displays and the activities. We went through a lot of idea generation. We reached out to local donors and possible supporters to get input. We had a particular supporter that had a collection in their family that they wanted to make available to the museum. So there was a lot of support there. As we worked with our exhibits and planning them, there were several things that we thought were important. Within each exhibit, somehow we had to reflect the past, the present, and the future. We didn't just want to be about past. We wanted to show students how that was reflecting the present and what might it mean to the future. We wanted them to think that through. In many ways, we worked with Sarah to talk about the learning objectives that are part of iLearn. And she'll chuckle as well, but we went through a lot of work to try and say, here's what we think we can do to meet this learning objective. Here's what we think we can do to meet this one. So we knew how important that was, because ultimately, one of the things that we're going to serve, not just be a place for visitors, as it were, from the public, but to serve the school system and to serve the teachers and make their jobs easier, hopefully. We had to have interactivity. We know that in order to keep children engaged, we cannot just say, walk through here and take a look. That was not going to do it. So we had to focus on that interactivity. Can I tell you tonight every example of that? No, because we were still in the planning phases for that. We knew that we wanted to incorporate technology, touch screens, audio tours, all kinds of things that we can do to tell our story and to involve the visitors that came in. There was going to be an activity center in the hub of our museum that was going to reflect all of the different things that were going on, but really gave the visitors a chance to get involved. Again, not just walk through, but something they could get their hands on. You'll remember in some cases, perhaps, that we have education kits that we have shared with the teachers in the school system. Those needed to be updated. So the first thing we did is we brought teachers in and said, tell us, are you going to use these? If you're not going to make us feel bad. Just tell us. No, we want to use them. So we started to look at those, and that was another part where IU South Bend came to us and said, or came to the plate, if you will, we'll help you. We'll help reimagine those. We'll make them a class project. We will put it on their objectives. And that is still going on to this day. So we were very, very excited about that. In operations, we knew that we had to learn a lot more about what was going on. One of the things that has amazed me in this process is, first of all that I have had the opportunity to learn about in terms of how a museum runs. And you may know this, you may not, but Hannah Lindahl Children's Museum ran as a full-fledged museum, and everything that suggests. So it's collection care, it's what you can do in terms of staffing and all of that. There's a STEPS program that's put out by one of the associations, and we were using that to build what we were trying to accomplish. Why not keep that in mind now, perhaps for eventual accreditation? So that was the track that we were on. We tried to educate ourselves through all of the webinars that are available out there for us. We were reviewing our policies and procedures, and we were also starting to pack and figure out how we were going to move the collection, which again, when you look at collection care and all the things that rule that, that's a big task. It's white gloves for some items. It's, specific kinds of boxes that things have to be stored in. So this was not just let's just move it. And I became familiar also with, I would use the term inventory items, and I was very politely corrected that inventory was probably the wrong word for me to use when I'm talking about the museum, because a full-fledged inventory means you're looking at every item, you're updating the system to say, you know, does it have an additional scratch in it? You know, has something happened with this item? There was not the time to do that. So we decided to rename what we were doing the collection verification process. So that was what I was calling inventory, but we came to refer to as collection verification. In other words, do we have it or don't we? And let's make sure that we note that in our database. We started to look at events and what kind of events did we want to use. Certainly that was going to involve the fundraising side of things, but it was going to involve just having people here and constantly trying to support things that would bring people into the museum. One of the things we talked about is a meeting room within the museum so that people had another venue, and hopefully a wonderful one, so that they'd be in the museum while they were having that meeting. The meeting might not be related to the museum at all, but they were going to be able to see the museum when they met. We looked at marketing, and we decided a name change was in order. And we went through a very laborious process to get that done. Many people had input. We went through, I think probably there were 120, 125 names that made the list. And we narrowed that down to a specific name. And then we had someone that was going to be working with us that would help us in terms of branding, getting that word out, and everything that it might suggest marketing-wise. As far as the administration, we knew in being self-sustaining that we needed to become a 501c3, so we had an attorney that helped us with that, and we were in that process, as well as we knew that insurance was going to be a major part of what we needed to look at. So we started those conversations with a local insurance agency to really understand what we had to do. Obviously, all of those things entering into costs. So then we moved to location. And we weren't ready to move at that point, but we investigated a lot of options. And where we were, or where we are at this point, is talking about what we've dubbed a pop-up museum. So finding a smaller location where we might have limited rotating displays. So you can come in and perhaps in another quarter you come in and it's completely different. And you come in another quarter and it's completely different. That area would also serve as fundraising central. It is difficult to raise funds if people can't see what you're talking about. So we wanted to be able to have that opportunity to show some activities, to show the interactivity, to get people involved with that. So that was on the docket. We had looked at some buildings and we're in the planning process there. Very exciting. We felt that we would do that until, in our words, we earned the right to move to a permanent location or a larger location. So that pop-up museum may have been in place for 3 years, if that's what it took. And maybe that would have ended up to be the entire thing, that worked. So, you know, those were the kinds of things that we were investigating. We also looked at staffing. Again, I made the point earlier, we have spent all this time using volunteers. There came a time when somebody needed to be working on this more than a few hours, and that is not to negate the work that's been done by the volunteers, but you needed somebody here that was taking responsibility for some of these things on a regular basis. And we decided that we would focus on a set and exhibit designer because that's where we needed the help. We went through the whole discussion of we probably will not, should not keep this entire collection simply because not everything may fit in this kind of newly reimagined museum. And so you have to go through a deaccession process, and that was something we needed to look at. And we needed someone that could come in and say, you know, you're looking at that and saying, maybe I don't want to, you know, I want to deaccession this. And that person might have said, no, there's a way to use this. You're not seeing this right. You can do this. So that was above our pay grade. We did not necessarily, although we've had some great ideas, we needed somebody else to weigh in on that. So that staffing, we had begun to look at what the positions would look like and started to think about what that person and their skill sets might be. Finally, we looked at fundraising. And to be honest, I had someone ask me recently, what is your fundraising goal? I don't know, because there are too many unknowns at this point. We've really been implementing only for about 6 months. So we weren't there yet. What are the things that would affect it? Things like the moving and the staffing and a lease and insurance and storage and exhibit design and marketing and technology. All those things would have had to be taken into consideration. Would we have come up with a goal? Of course we'd come up with a goal, but we didn't have it quite yet. We met with fundraising professionals. We met with, some of you may have heard of Give Grove. It's a local company that helps with online giving. They were willing to work with us. We did some initial drafts of pro formas, again, just to start to get a feel for what we were talking about. Because, again, for 73, almost 74 years, we have not had to worry about that. So this was a startup of a 70-plus year organization. We plan to do grant research to see what else would be out there for us to be able to use as we grew. So that's a very, very quick overview of the things we've done. Whenever I talk with someone about that, they tell me that it's obvious when I discuss it how passionate I am about it. So if the measure of a good consultant is never to get emotionally involved with your client, then I am really a bad consultant, because I did. Because I think they need that, because, I'm out there advocating just like they are. And so I adopted them. They may not know that, so we won't share it with them. When we talked about chatting with you for a few minutes tonight, Mr. Barker said, Jan, make a recommendation from your point of view. What do you think should happen? Well, from the museum perspective, we have individuals here tonight that have fully embraced this vision of where we're going, or where we had planned to go. As a museum functioning, again, as I said earlier, with all the policies and procedures and practices and everything that suggests, people have fully embraced that. And because we had that vision and we had a single focus to that vision, we were energized by that. And do we need to bring on more people? Of course we do. But we needed to have that vision to be able to say, here's what we need you to do. Here's how you can best help us. And again, continuing to build those partnerships. Our challenge, I'll look you dead in the eye when I say this, is fundraising. And there isn't a person out there that wouldn't have known that. The community has to step to the plate. And so would we be able to do that? I'd certainly like to, but I will not misrepresent that. That was a challenge. But we also had not fully attempted it yet either, because we weren't ready. From School City's perspective, you would have quicker access to space with the idea that we're talking about tonight with the library. You have quicker access to space. You can save some dollars. And the museum still exists in some form. There was no guarantee, if we could not raise those funds, that it would. And I'm being absolutely honest with you. I'd love to tell you, we teased within our group that we hoped to come in tonight and show you our lottery ticket, our winning lottery ticket. But apparently the person that promised to do that is not here, so I guess that's a note for us. So those are the comments I wanted to share with you tonight. I know that Lisa wants to also share some comments with you, and then, of course, Marsha and Donna. But I hope that gives you a glimpse of what we've done over the last year. So do you want me to answer any questions, or?
Well, thank you. That's very helpful. I'm not going to be asking. But are there any other members of the board who have questions for Ms. Fye?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Curry, Mr. Barker, school board members. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this evening. I also want to express my gratitude to Mr. Barker for his generosity and time and attention towards the museum.
Ms. Garti, could you just, for record's sake, state your name and address?
Lisa Garti. My address is 417 North Burkett Street, North Mishawaka.
Thank you.
I'm here this evening to represent our Museum Advisory Board and give our thoughts about this proposal. First, I'd like to state that I am a big fan of the library. I've been a loyal patron since the days of the Carnegie Library. My intention this evening is to share our concerns without offending anyone. My comments are coming from a place of love for the museum and a wish to see it succeed. From the beginning of this process, the library has been on our radar. One of our transition team's most favorite scenarios, second only to winning the lottery, was co-locating with the library. We obviously have the same target audience, the families of Mishawaka. If they had a space that we could lease from them, the possibilities are quite heady. How easy would it be for a story hour to feature some historical items that the children could then come into the museum to see and touch? And conversely, for them to be intrigued by something in the museum and then go into the library to learn more about it. We could even possibly share employees, but we have been told this cannot be. After passing on the library's plans to my advisory board, these are our major areas of concern. If the library's intentions have changed since our meeting in December, some of these may no longer be valid. Survive Alive. Our intent was to take the program with us, if at all possible, because it is the driver of students through our doors, and it is vitally important to our community. Our understanding is that the library does not intend to continue this connection, so what happens to Survive Alive? The next items pertain to the question, are we a museum? It's clear from our history that our founders intended us to be. From our first item in the collection, May 1946, a set of Korean dolls presented by a retired Mishawaka teacher to Miss Lindahl, until our latest edition, official form is filled out and signed by both parties stating that the item is going to the museum and that the donor is surrendering all rights to the object. The donor expects in return that we will care for that object in perpetuity and it will be shared with future generations. We follow best practices for museums in the areas of ethical deaccessioning, which is the removal of an item from our collection for very limited reasons, with the preference of gifting it to another similar institution, as well as collection preservation, loans of items to other museums and exhibits, to name but a few. We also have a functioning board and bylaws that we follow. Given the autonomy under which the museum operated, I think many of us did not quite understand the relationship with School City of Mishawaka, namely that they fully own the collection. So it shouldn't come as a shock that our donors may not understand this either. We worry about how the collection will be treated. Will the library follow these same practices for handling artifacts that our donors have come to expect? What about when decisions are made regarding whether items will stay in the collection? Will they follow the rules of deaccessioning? Is the library committed to learning best practices and creating policies to be a museum? In the same way, our financial donors have given money earmarked solely for museum purposes. School City of Mishawaka has done an excellent job of keeping our restricted contributions in segregated accounts so they aren't used for school system's needs. I hope we will be able to say that the library will pledge to do the same. To my knowledge, no one currently associated with the museum, either advisory board members or volunteers, have been asked for any information about the museum. And as a condition of accepting the library's proposal, our advisory board will be dissolved. It may not come as a surprise to you that there have been times in the past when the school system has questioned, why are we running a museum? Our advisory board, whose sole purpose is the success of this museum, has been able to provide some answers. With the leadership of our directors, we committed ourselves to creating more and better educational experiences for our students. We have always been there when the existence of the museum is at peril. In their future, when there may be a different library director and different library board members, who will be there to answer the question, why is the library running a museum? Ever since Lexi Schroeder-Cobb, our director, left, I have taken on the responsibility, with considerable help, of trying to keep the museum afloat. Like many of our past directors, I've developed very strong maternal feelings towards the museum. Just as a mother would want a new caregiver to know that their child needs to have their favorite stuffed animal or a story at bedtime, it's particularly difficult to be cut off from ever being able to work on behalf of the museum again. I hope that the library might reconsider allowing some of our museum community the opportunity to continue with some type of connection to the organization we love. It is because of that love that I share these items this evening. We want nothing but the best for our museum. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Garcia? Thank you very much. Someone from the library like to speak, and then we'll open up to general members after the library.
Thank you for the invitation to come. I realize that there's been a lot of confusion, and
Oh, Don, could you give your name, title, and address for the record, please?
Donna Meeks, I'm the director of the Mishawaka-Penn-Harris Public Library. Did you say my address?
Yes, please.
30522 Quill.
It could be the library's address, if you like.
209 Lincoln Way, East Mishawaka.
Thank you.
Okay. I was approached about a year and a half ago. I received a phone call from one of our board members who said that the Hannah Lindahl may need a new home. And that's how the library's interest came to be. We wanted the museum to survive. That's really what we wanted. So we had an invitation to come and see it. I had not seen it. I'm not from this area. And we went out and we looked it over, and we found out shortly after that actually it wasn't the direction that it looked like you all were going to. So right away we backed off. I say that because we've not done a lot of homework in this area, because our understanding was that, you had hired Jan and she was looking into a different avenue for the museum. And we truly, if that should happen, wish it the best. We want the museum to survive. That was about a year and a half ago. And then at the end of last year, I received another phone call from the same board member saying, it looks like things are changing over. And we were invited to a meeting with Mr. Barker. So it was revived for us that it might be that Hannah Lindahl would find a safe place with the library. And so we went to the meeting and had a discussion, and that's where it was left until we received your invitation to come and talk about it. I thought that if I were you all, I would want to know, if it went with the library, a little bit about to whom I was handing this over. So I've actually brought a little bit of information about the library for you to at least understand where we are right now as far as capable of receiving it or not. Sorry, my lips are dry. I'm not a public speaker. All right. So the Mishawaka-Penn-Harris Library has been around since 1907. Oh, thank you. I will take that. We serve the Penn and Harris Townships. We also serve Madison Elementary School but not Madison Township. Okay. All right, I'm going to try this. Okay. We have a $5.2 million budget and a staff of 62. We have 49% of our community are active card holders. We do purge on an annual basis. This is that 49% is based on the 2010 census. Last year, we created over 5,000 new cards, so we are an active library. We have, on the average, 4,600 people come through our 3 locations. We check out almost 12,000 items per week to those visitors, and we have over 2,000 visits to our library per week to use our technology, whether it's our wireless or to use computers. So there are people coming in the doors constantly. Our mission statement is the Mishawaka-Penn-Harris Public Library inspires and empowers our community by connecting patrons to literature, information, ideas, and new experiences for lifelong enrichment. That we adopted that, a mission statement about 2 years ago, and that is what we believe our purpose is and our responsibility to this community. Our programming successes for 2019, and I'm specifically focusing on the programming because I'm thinking if we acquired the museum, that's what it would fall under. We have internal, as you will see, and we have the external. We had in 2019 over 26,000 people attend our programs. That is a 13% increase in a year. So we are thriving. So the internal we service all ages from birth through, all ages. And so we have the children's area, and you can see some of the things that we do there. We also do the young adult, and we have just finished our young adult area at the Mishawaka location, and we're seeing an uptake in attendance there, as well as we're about to hit the Bittersweet branch and redo that and make a nice teen area for them as well. And then we also have the adult and the general family. Then we have the external, which we recently, in the last year, we have hired 2 school outreach specialists, and their purpose is to partner with the schools so that we are a supplement to you. We had, just since July, over 3,600 either students or teacher contacts as far as some type of programming in the schools. So that is turning out to be very, very successful. We also take information out to the community for the aged. We have the homebound delivery. We provide tech support. We do programming in the senior center. We also have the parks, the fairs, that type of events. So we are really pushing to go out in the community as well as people coming in. There's a point behind that I'll make later on the external there. We have concerns if we take this museum. Can we or should we even do it? We do have the staff, and they are passionate, and those numbers show. They put their hands to it. They've got the energy, they have the passion. We have the finances, and we have the technology. However, we do not have a dedicated space right now. We are looking into some things. I can't really share with you. I've been asked not to by the board because it may or may not happen, but we are looking for space, not specifically for the museum. We were looking for space. We're starting to outgrow ourselves, so we have been looking for space, and if we take the museum, we will incorporate that into the new space. We do not have a definitive vision. We're not sure, we haven't had the time to do our homework, to come up with a strategic plan. This has all come up so quickly. Again, we were simply answering the call that the museum may need a home. The unknowns, the assets. Other than my one visit, we have not seen a list of the assets, so we don't know, are they relative or not? Would we use all of them? Would we use some of them? How would we use them? That's all unknown. The timing, the relocating. We do not have the space yet, so if we had to do this sooner than later, most likely we would put it in storage. But we cannot commit to, if we took it, how long it would be before it opened. That's part of that unknown. And the other and last part is the autonomy. Our board wanted to make it very clear that if we take this, it has to be free and clear. They're not interested in 2 boards. They're not interested in an advisory board, unfortunately. They see potential conflicts coming. You can imagine if you had a second board here to have to agree with things. And then I asked them, I want you to, these people here, they're the ones behind all those numbers you just saw. We have a programming department and we have a youth services department. And the programming department was created 2 years ago. We had to split because we were outgrowing ourselves and we needed a team to focus simply on programming. So we've got the programming team, and I've spoken with both of these coordinators. The youth services, they do the K through 12 in the they do birth through 12 in the library, but they also are the ones that the school outreach falls under, and they go out to the schools. So then we also have Deanna Judy, and she does our local history. She runs the Heritage Center, so she's very familiar with historical items. She's not an archivist, though. I will be clear about that, but she is very familiar with historical items. So this basically would be the team of 10 that would be overseeing what we did with the museum. So I asked them to consider, is this something, I've received a phone call, if it were to be something that we were to acquire, do you feel it is in the interest of the taxpayer that we take this museum? Because we always have to consider that, the taxpayer, and is this the best move for our library, and are we representing their needs? So what I asked them was, look again at our mission statement. As much as you love the museum, does this fall under our mission statement? And they felt absolutely so. And the two parts mostly are, if you look at information for the educational side of it, the historical side of it, and then the new experiences for the cultural side of it that we would be providing the community. And those things would basically surround the ideal of the museum and the lifelong enrichment. You know, the pride in our community, the items that we have to share, the history that we have to share, all certainly falls under information, new experiences, and definitely the lifelong enrichment for this community. So we do feel that it would be an excellent option if we were able to take the museum. The vision, the best we could come up with at this point without actually sitting down and looking at the items and doing our homework, a couple things. One, it would have to become fluid. Items would have to go in and out and be interchangeable. We couldn't just put something in a room and be done with it. So there'd be the interchangeability of it. The other thing was participatory, hands-on experiences. Anybody coming into the museum, they would have to have some type of activities that they are actually participating in as well, other than just the viewing. And the third thing would be, we'd have to incorporate a lot of technology to do this. Internally, what they came up with is we'd be serving basically three sectors. We have the area schools, we have the homeschoolers, and we'd have the general public. And they felt in that what it would be is library tours and cards. As people came in to view the museum, we'd certainly plug our cards. Exhibits and programs that would, similar to what you were saying, Jan, as far as it sounded very much the same. And then the other thing was the fire safety education, is that we actually have, Lisa asked to have the Survive Alive house. And so that would be the part. We did speak with Sarah to say, if we were to obtain this, is this something you all would even feel, you know, it was a need, it was something that you would use? And she was honest to say, in its current state, what I can say is the only thing we would really use would be the fire safety education. And that would mean if we ended up we said we could work to see if there were other things, but even if there weren't, our team feels that between the general public and the homeschoolers, your private schools, your daycare centers, we would have enough for an internal museum. The external was because I threw out the idea that if we were to obtain, some type of an RV or some type of mobile unit that we could actually travel with and change out. These were, again, you'd still have area schools, the general public, and the other thing is the senior centers, because one idea, we take to the senior centers a story time where the elderly share their experiences, and we thought this would be just one example of us actually bringing some of those items and them teaching us a little bit with those items. So they had some ideals there that we would do with the traveling, the programs, and of course we can do remote library cards. So that's what we came up with on the fly. We took this to our Board of Trustees on January 26th, and they passed a motion to authorize our Buildings and Grounds Committee, one, to accept the donation of assets described as the Hannah Lindahl Children's Museum from School City of Mishawaka, or to purchase said assets for an amount not to exceed $100. It is anticipated that MPHPL will be provided an inventory of said assets to be received and will make a good faith effort to relocate said assets within 60 days of the receipt. Our board was delighted with this idea. When we threw it out there, every one of them said, we love it. We love the museum, we love it. We think we could do service to it and to our community should we have it, and certainly let them know we'd be willing to take it. Any questions? Sorry for the dry mouth. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Yes, because we have the amount of staff that we do and the departments that we do, we feel that it is possible that we might have to acquire an additional staff person, but our plan would be to make it mostly work with the staff that we have because they're there already, and this is what they do already, to some extent as far as the programming.
Now, at present, you don't have a specific space.
We do not have a specific, we are looking into something, but we do not have it, and that is a concern because if you're thinking we take this and the museum will be up in a year, up and running, probably not. The only thing that we know would continue because of the schools would be the fire safety. We'd have to find a temporary space for that. I'm not sure how tall it is, so we've been in discussions about that. But the museum, it could be 2 years, it could be we don't know because, again, we haven't even seen it really. So there's just so many unknowns. I wouldn't want to make any promises that we couldn't keep.
Well, quite frankly, I've long felt that either it has to be a school or a library setting for these museum pieces, because these are the obvious places that they're going to be viewed and understood and add an educational benefit to those that are seeing it. So it definitely would be considered, I think, myself.
I wonder if you feel that you've done enough due diligence and are totally aware of everything to where you can make an offer for this? You really feel that you're at that point?
I feel, truthfully, that there are many unknowns. We have not reached out. I think Lisa had mentioned something that she had not. Our understanding was we had no right to reach out because you all were going in another direction. And so a year and a half ago when it was said to us, actually, no, we backed off right away because we didn't want to look, we're trying to take the museum when the museum's trying to go another way. You know, you want to be sensitive of that. And so we just said, we wish you well and meant it. And now it has resurfaced. And so to answer your question, no, sir, as far as the due diligence, this isn't how I would normally work it. It would be to do my homework, see the assets, all the other things. It just, the timing of it, I received the phone call, are you all interested, you know, from our board member who felt that there was a time issue, really more on your part than our part, and that if that were the case, do we want it or would we let it go? And our team felt there's enough there that we want it.
I'll tell you, I mean, I have acquired, I'm a businessman, I've
Yes.
acquired a couple of businesses, and I've spent a lot of time and effort, myself and my people, taking a look at the targeted company that we're going to acquire.
Right.
And at the same time, I mean, the most important thing to us has always been the people and the product or service that's being provided. And I really want to know, before I'm going to create that merger,
Yes.
I want to do all my homework. And I
Yes.
want to be confident that we're going to be successful, that
Yes.
both will be successful. And I wonder if we're going too fast. I'm wondering whether we shouldn't come together. It sounds to me like we've been at a distance. We've had a couple of phone calls. And I'm wondering whether maybe we should bring both groups together and spend some time and really understand that what we're doing is the correct thing, the right thing, and that we're pursuing the direction that we want to take. At the same time, I don't want to take something that's very valuable that we've had our hands on for 74 years, give it to someone, and then have them put it in a corner for another 10 years. So I'm not comfortable at this point.
Understand.
And
That
I
would-
think all three of you have the same direction and the same plan and the same hope, is to see it survive and be interactive and keep moving forward with it. So I think you're all on the same page there.
Yes.
I don't think that there's been enough conversation between the groups collectively to say who's in, who's out, what parts do we want, what parts do we not want, that kind of thing. I think, again, the same as Bill, that it seems like it's moving too quickly. Do we want it to go somewhere so it's valuable? Absolutely. Survive Alive is super valuable, but so are all of the pieces that are in there. So I just think it needs more time and more communication on that end, as well as School City, so that we're all on the same page to know when, what, how, and where. I obviously think it should go to the library. Where else would it make the most sense? But I think collectively, everyone needs to sit down. I don't feel like I can make a decision and say,
Yeah, I feel much the same way.
Yeah.
I need a little more time to think about it and consider both sides in this.
Well, too, I think, like, I sat here and listened to Jan, and I've heard her ideas before when we were meeting with you, Mr. Barker. I think they've got some really fabulous ideas. I'm not sure what preempted me getting that phone call at this time. We're just here to say, if you decide that the museum needs a home, we are absolutely willing to do our best by it. We believe we could use it as a great benefit to the community, but so could they make that. So it's just for us, we want, our board wants you to know they absolutely love the museum. And this isn't just for us, it's got to be more than sentimental for us. Talk about the business thing is, it has to align with our mission, and it has to be something that we feel our library taxpayers will receive a benefit to put in, because it will cost us money, it will cost time and staff and effort and heart and all of that. We believe that it will, but in addressing what you said, we absolutely don't have all the information, which is what I was saying that we would have liked to have at this point, but we're going to leave it with you all to know that that is just what we said a year and a half ago. It is an option to you to consider. Should you get to a point that you think that would be the best thing for the library, we would say, give us a call. Did you have anything you wanted to say, Marsha? Okay.
Thank you all for allowing us to be here this evening. My name is Marsha Wells. I am the president of the Board of Trustees of the Mishawaka-Penn Harris Public Library. From a passionate side, I can tell you that we have the marketing staff available. We have 62 staff members who are so energetic and so passionate that we did not bring them tonight because their heads explode constantly with ideas, and we didn't want to keep you past midnight. We do have the finances. We have a $5.2 million budget. That is not to say it would certainly all be spent on the museum or integrating it into our system, but we do have the finances available and would not need to do the fundraising that unfortunately the museum would have to do. We have meeting rooms. We have the ability for rotating displays, for hands-on displays, maker spaces. We have the technology. We have limited storage space right now. We have a functioning, working board of trustees. We have the outreach. We go to the parks, to the fairs, etc. We do not have a location, and we keep reiterating that, but we want to make sure that you understand it. Right now, we do not have the room, but we came out ahead of the game. We've been looking into something already for the library, so this may help. To a couple of Lisa's questions, the Survive Alive House, we do intend to make that available to the schools. We understand how important that is to the curriculum and to the students. The treatment of the collection, we have many things at the library besides books, and we have a somewhat collection of our own, and so we do understand that these things need to be treated respectfully, carefully, and we would do everything in our power to make sure that this collection is well cared for. Libraries tell stories, not just from books. But libraries tell stories, but they're a place where the stories come alive. And that's what we think this collection can help us do. Really bring the historical stories alive to the people of Mishawaka. We do not have a definite vision. I wish we do, but we have not seen the collection. We have not seen an asset list, so we're at a little bit of a disadvantage in not really knowing what's there and being able to tell you how we're going to integrate that into our patron services. So if there are any other questions that you might have?
I think we need to slow the train down.
I agree.
And then let everybody talk, take a look at what we have, and hopefully you'll feel more comfortable.
I agree, yes. And I agree with everything you said, Bill. Having my own business, you get all your ducks in a row, and in this case, we've kind of worked backwards. And that's been a little bit difficult. I agree some more time would certainly help us out. Yes.
I know as a board member, what really precipitated most of this in the beginning is we wanted to find a space for the library because we needed the space it's at, and funding is always a concern because the school budget is something that we're always trying to scrape together.
Yes.
So those two things initiated it, but in initiating that, we also realized we've had this museum for 74 years. It has a history, and so we want to make sure, at least I want to make sure, that it is utilized the most effective way that it could be, and as a service to those people that have donated these things. So, yeah, but I think maybe a little more discussion would help.
Marsha, when the call came to me in mid-December, I think, regarding the library's interest in the museum, is there an issue that you do need us to act somewhat, even though we could slow down, do you need us to act somewhat sooner than later so that you can make a decision on a space? Because I know that was a conversation that's been had. I don't know if that's of great importance right now or not, but.
Actually, it is not. We have been looking for more space anyway, and so we did have our ducks in a row there and kind of had a vision of what we wanted this space to be able to do for us. The museum kind of threw a little bit of a wrench into that, and we started thinking in other directions. So actually, to answer your question, to have another space, really that's something we're looking for anyway, whether or not we were to acquire the museum.
Okay,
So, yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank
Then
you.
this wouldn't be prohibitive for us to have another work session or a little more discussion to get our ducks in a row before we make a decision.
No, that would be wonderful.
Great.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who'd like to address the board on this? And if so, please come forward, give your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Paul Gleisner, 204 Hackberry Drive. Lifelong resident of Mishawaka, and I just retired from the Mishawaka Fire Department. I'm here speaking in favor of the Survive Alive House. For 33 years of my career, I taught over at this Survive Alive House. For roughly nearly half that career, I ran that house for my shift, the A shift. And for being very fortunate in my 33-year career, I've never pulled a school-age child out of a burning residence. And I think this house had something to do with it. I can't say that about the other shift, the B shift. You could hit a golf ball across this parking lot and across the playground where a terrible day happened in the late 80s. And that's why this house was so important. 4 children were in a bedroom that unfortunately was locked. They started their playing with a lighter and setting their toys on fire, trying to throw them out of a window into the snow to put them out. Well, the fire got too big, and unfortunately, the firefighters rescued all 4, but 2 did not survive. 2 did survive with severe burns. So, teaching kids, I don't know if anybody's here been through the Survive Alive program. We taught 1st, 3rd, and 5th graders. 1st graders, in a museum, they say this was a static museum. Ours was not. Ours was a physically active museum where we forced kids to go down to a smoky hallway. You don't know how many times I set the smoke alarms off in this school. But in 3rd grade, we taught them how to go out a window. We expanded their knowledge. And in 5th grade, we gave them a refresher and we made them do it. So 1st, 3rd, and 5th graders. And we were the first Survive Alive program in the nation, this house. And me personally, I have had numerous fire departments from around the state of Indiana that I showed this house to them because they were going to build their own Survive Alive house. Other cities around the country that I've showed this house to. So I don't know what's going to happen to this house, but we can't let it die. And I was the 2nd generation. The 1st generation firefighters who built this house and ran this house, unfortunately can't be there because they're deceased. So I was a secondary caregiver for this, and Then I passed it down to my friend Brian, and he's still running the Survival Life program as we speak, and he'll have more numbers. But thank you.
Mr. Gleisner, I'd just add, we're very committed to the Survive Alive House. We have no intention of seeing that cease operation. I know the advisory board is committed to the Survive Alive House. I think the library board was not initially, but I think they are now. And I've also had conversations with Mayor Wood about the Survive Alive House, regardless of what happens with the museum. So
Thank
we
you.
are committed to the Survive Alive House in
Cool.
this community.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gleisner. Is there anybody else?
Good evening, I'm Dave Weber. I reside at 131 South Shore Drive, Mishawaka. And just want to say a couple of things. I did not know about everything going on in terms of the library, et cetera, going on. But first of all, I'm very happy about the timetable being slowed down a little bit because it did seem very quickly things were happening. From my perspective as a 40-year veteran here at School City, Mishawaka, it's been a very great experience for the kids to come here for all three, museum, Survive Alive, and the historic bus trips. And I'll speak on that because I find that too many things in the past are not remembered by a lot of the kids and the people, and seeing a sense of the past history helps us go toward the future. I know that when I was teaching, we had all three, and our kids would all go to the Survive Alive as well as the museums and the historic bus trips. And I think those are all three very valuable resources that I would like to see continue in some form or another. My father was a former firefighter as well and was kind of helped in the Survive Alive doing that too when he retired in '75. But I appreciate the thoughts of everybody here, the library board, the Hannah Lindahl Children's Museum, and I think the value of experience to the students, teachers, and the parents are invaluable. And I know that my kids, as third graders, learn their address, their phone number, and everything else, and how to get out of a house in the event of a fire, and that speaks volumes to me. The education that they receive from that. I'm looking forward to future endeavors or whichever, however it goes. But I'm a Mishawaka boy, and I'm proud to say that I'm a Mishawaka, proud of our city and our treasures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pretty sure that, no, you can sit down, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing about this work session is this is kind of easy because we're all on the same page. Survive Alive is amazing, the historical tour, the museum, the library, School City. Everyone's on the same page, so this makes it super easy. It's just that we need to all be aligned in the same direction. So I think that none of these things should go away. Everything that all of you have said is so important to the history and the future of our students. And so I feel encouraged and positive that we're gonna reach a destination point and we're gonna give all of these items their best day and their glory for the future. So I feel like this has been a very positive sit down, and I think that everyone has been extremely respectful and positive about moving forward. So thank you all for giving all of us all of your thoughts and feelings, and we need to do our due diligence and make sure that we're all on the same board.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Yes.
I just had a question. My name's Mary Watt.
Could you? And your name and address again, please?
Mary Watt, 1207 Prospect Drive, Mishawaka. I'm a lifetime resident. I taught a little bit in the Mishawaka schools. I went all the way through the Mishawaka schools. In fact, since I've been around probably as long as the dirt. Hannah Lindahl, I remember her very well. She came to our classrooms. She visited, I went to Beager School. She visited every elementary school. she was very highly respected. I just would like to put in a suggestion that wherever the museum ends up, her name be retained with that. And the other question that I had was, I believe Pete DeKeever is looking at assembling some items from our history in Mishawaka. And these would not necessarily be related to the schools. They might be related to industry and other civic and sacred groups in town. And I just wonder if perhaps, since space is limited, perhaps there might be some consideration given to looking at the inventory in the museum that is here and see if any of that might perhaps be sent the way of the Mishawaka History Museum. So thank you very much. It's been very interesting.
Thank you, Ms. Watt. Anyone else who'd like to speak on this matter? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening. My name is Annette Ernst, 60303 Cedar Road, Mishawaka, Indiana. I'm going to speak neutral. I am on an advisory board. I've been with the museum for years. I started as a volunteer. But let's get to the chase. We have 2 interested parties, which is great, which means the museum means a lot. We always have the problem about the financial stages for Handle being self-sufficient. And that was one of the reasons why, tax credit, we had to find our own funding. Leslie Schroeder, she had another year she could have stayed with the museum to help with grants, help with the funding, but she decided she had a job elsewhere. She looked in advance and left us. When she left us, I just feel like we were a little on the abandoned side. I think we had trouble getting to the computer system. We had to be left on our own trying to struggle and get things together. I'm sorry the library hasn't been up there. Maybe you should, if we have time, take you through some time so you can see some of the artifacts, past history. One thing about the Heritage Center, they have taken a lot of stuff from past history of Mishawaka, which is wonderful. If you go to the Heritage Center, which I have, but I wish you guys would open more, they have a bunch of stuff on the Handle Children's Museum. And ever since it opened, it had a problem being self-sufficient. So it has moved to different locations, so people approached with, ideas of where it could go. And I just feel we have 2 people, they're very interested. Somebody that can get grants, somebody knows how to run the libraries, somebody knows about finances. We have people that are dedicated, that do past history of the Museum of Everything. It would be nice if you 2 would get together and hatch things out, see if we can work things out. They do not want the library to be part of it, but I figure you guys do have some stuff that is on loan from the library, which you've done a wonderful job of displaying. So you guys do have a talent. You guys do have an interest. We have an interest. I have seen museums come and go. I have visited museums in other states. I have visited a museum in Rockford, Illinois. That is a children's museum. It does not have all the stem cell, but it does have hands-on. It has a bubble machine where kids can do a bubble. It had told about the astronauts that were on the space shuttle. Did you know we had 3 from the area? All of them were Notre Dame graduates, and one was from South Bend, but she considered Rockford her home, and she donated items from the space system to that museum. I know we're thinking we're outdated, but when the museum started, it was to give kids interested in objects from different areas. It wasn't all about hands-on. Kids can think, kids can start creating. We have so many video games now. We have hands-on stuff I have seen at other museums where the kids can beat the system to death by pushing buttons too hard and ruining it. I visited the biggest one in Indiana, the biggest one in the world. What are we talking about? Indianapolis Children's Museum. Now, I have been down there several times. They have fun from Libby's, and they have brought in, things to display. They were the first ones to bring in the, what do you guys call in China, the armored soldiers. And it's turned around, they had in Star Trek displays. All these things do cost money. So we have to decide just where we want to take the next step. Is the museum going to be open during the library hours? Will it be open on the weekdays? It's just, I think we need to combine the forces and sit down. We have very two interested parties. The museum has lasted for 75 years. It has gone through financial difficulty for financial years. Yes, we did not look into the grant program because we had a curator to do that. And what can I say? I'm not a grant writer either. But there is money out there, and it does take time. The library says even if they did take over, it might have to go into storage. We're already at the point where some of the stuff is being boxed up to go into storage. So I just have the feeling this is going on for a while. Things take time. You don't want to make a drastic effort. If everybody would just like to get together, mediate, talk it over, see if there can be a compromise. Stuff has gone on loan to other museums. We have been up to, my boyfriend and I have been up to Detroit, Michigan. The Ford Museum. Did you know they have a Studebaker up there on loan? People loan out things to other museums. They even have it at the Indianapolis Jones Museum. And sometimes when they loan something, they loan it there knowing it will be kept and it is permanent display, but it does belong to another party. Now, I know you like to have everything out in 60 days, and I know when they put the museum together, it took a while to build all the structures and everything, but if we could have a little more time, if we could get the two parties to sit together and to discuss, I think that would be the great thing. Because they always said 2 heads are better than 1. The museum cannot go away, cannot disappear, and they do have, if you look in their files, they have a cute little thing about when stuff was donated to the museum when it first began, they gave what the donations were and some of the back history. Did you know the drum and fife, who it came from? Interesting story. Look it up. Because it came from somebody that ran away from home to join the Civil War. And their family donated that. There is a lot of history that isn't known that makes this interesting. And I think instead of fighting for it, join forces. And that is just what I'm up here to say.
Thank you, Ms. Ernst. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. There are 2 people, and I won't call you out in case you feel that your interests or your perspectives have already been adequately presented, but there are 2 people who signed on the speaker registration form who have not gotten up to speak. I mean, if you would like to do so, this would be a good time.
My name is Jennifer Johns, 1523 Quincy Drive, Mishawaka. I've been in the museum field for almost 25 years, and I've seen a lot of museums come and go and transfer to larger institutions. I've had the delight of helping the Lindahl over the past year, just with helping them, like how do you get things prepared and like when they had their flood. And I've just seen the potential that they have and the great assets that they have that really aren't being out there for the students as well as the general public. I've always wondered why they weren't open more, and I could see that there would be a great assets to that. I've lived here in Mishawaka my whole entire life. I remember going to the Lindahl when they were in Lincoln Way, Survival Live House when I was here. As well, and just knowing that, the library has this interest, but again, as they voiced, there's a lot of questions up in the air as to, where would you put it, how would you use it, and I mean, the museum's been working hard trying to figure out what, aspect they want to do and trying to make it more interactive, which is what you have to do in today's society to get the kids and other people interested, and so, I mean, they've really done a lot of their research on what they see in the future for the for the museum and its collection. And to, libraries and museums have a lot of similarities, but they are totally two different entities. And to be able to just have them take it and, put it away and have it storage, I don't think it's doing it a great assets to the Mishawaka collection, and for the public to be able to have access and to see those things. Because there's so much more that we have. If they have their own building that they can, excuse me, be able to have these exhibits, even if they can only do those pop-ups for a while until they find their own place, to be able to have those exhibits on a regular basis, I think would be a better thing, because they have the lifeblood. They really, want what's best for that collection. And to see it just, oh, we're going to store it, we don't know when we're going to have it on display. It's kind of disheartening that these things would just be, and then they don't have a museum person on staff. You can say you know how to store things, but there's a whole process on how you should store it, how you should handle it, the cataloging in inventory, as well as just conserving those things. You need somebody that has that background to be able to maintain those things, because you can't just let anybody come and put their hands on those things, because then they're just going to fall apart, and then you're not going to have those. So you just have to be careful on maintaining and preserving those things. So that's all I have.
Well, thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Brian T. Linson II, 1119 Climbing Rose Lane, Mishawaka. City firefighter for 25 years. Been with the school city of Mishawaka for a little over 20 years at the high school, hall monitor. So I'm really, really involved with the community and this museum and school board and the fire department. I just wanted to throw some numbers really quick. Firefighter Paul, who just retired, him and I have been working together for a long, long time on this. He passed the torch to me, so I got to run it. And as of this year, our numbers, 36 years we've been here at the museum with School City, really good partnership. We've seen almost 82,000 people through the house. So I think that's really, really good. And Paul saying that we were really the first in the country. There were a lot of little pop-up public educations, but we were dedicated to the first structure in the United States. The city of Indianapolis came up here, went through the house, went through the museum, took a lot of stuff down there. They spent $5 million on their Survival Life house. It is immaculate. And if you go down there, they will all say thank you to the city, thank you to School City, and thank you to the museum. So that's really, really important. They see like 30 to 40,000 people because they're open all the time, and they have people that can do that stuff. So that's really, really exciting. But one of the big things I wanted to talk about is I wanted to thank everybody back here who volunteered, who spent their time, their weekends, their nights, you guys as well. This is really, really important. I've been on 25 years, and like Paul, I've never had to pull a child out or anybody out of a house. This program, this museum is so important to this community, this area. We have to fix this, we have to get this going, and we have to move forward. And whatever we can do, we are going to do it. And I really just have to say thank you very much to everybody back here for their dedication and the love and the passion. And it's really about it. So hopefully we can move on and get this going and make it a better place. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Linson. Anybody else? All right, well, we're going once, twice. Speak up. All right, well, this has been very valuable for the input for everybody here, not just the board, but all of you out in the audience. And I think everyone has received a lot to think about, and all of these comments are important and valuable. So thank you very much for sharing them. And if there's nothing else to come before the board, I will declare us adjourned. Thank you very much.
live next door.